It was supposed to be just another quiet evening in Villa Park, Illinois, but on March 17, 2007, a single phone call shattered that peace. Inside a small garage in the trunk of a classic car she loved, police found the lifeless body of 32-year-old Rebecca Klein, bound, gagged, and suffocated. The killer, not a stranger, not a burglar, but the woman she had loved and trusted for 7 years. It was a story the media couldn't resist. Betrayal, greed, and lies so bizarre they sounded like fiction. But this wasn't fiction, and in the end, it would send one woman to prison for decades. Before we dive into the crime itself, let's take a step back. Let's run a background check on the two women at the heart of this story, and the families who once thought they knew them best. Rebecca Becky Klein was born April 4, 1974, in Illinois. She grew up in a close, working-class family, the kind where Sunday dinners mattered and birthdays were never forgotten. Friends say Becky had a big heart. She remembered the little things, thank you cards, phone calls, just to check in, surprise gifts for no reason. She was steady, loyal, dependable. She also had dreams. She wanted stability, maybe a family of her own someday, and she worked hard to build that. At the time of her death, she was caring for adults with disabilities at range of motion in Winfield. She loved the job. It gave her purpose, and her clients adored her. But when Becky introduced her family to Nicole Abusharif, reactions were mixed. In 2007, same-sex relationships weren't widely embraced in suburban Illinois. Some relatives avoided the subject, others openly disapproved. Becky, stubborn and determined, chose love anyway. Nicole Abusharif was born September 14, 1980. On the surface, she was magnetic, quick with a smile, always ready with a story. She could make people laugh, make them trust her. But underneath, Nicole lived in a world of fantasy. To one friend, she was a firefighter. To another, a CIA operative. At different times, she claimed she was a storm chaser, a professional bowler, even terminally ill. None of it was true. She thrived on attention, and people often fell for it. But to those who knew her best, including her family, Nicole was unreliable, reckless, and dangerous with the truth. When she brought Becky into her life, she called her a soulmate. But in reality, Nicole's soulmate would become her victim. Despite society's rejection, they didn't care. Rebecca Klein and Nicole Abusharif decided to move forward anyway. In 2000, they began their life together in Villa Park, Illinois. For 7 years, they shared a home, one working hard to keep their life stable, the other chasing excitement wherever she could find it. Becky worked as an account coordinator at United Healthcare, a job she took pride in. She was dependable, clocking in every morning, paying the bills on time, keeping the household afloat. For Becky, loyalty wasn't optional. It was who she was. Nicole was the spark, the thrill seeker. But as the years passed, the cracks began to show. Financial trouble crept in. Nicole's lies got bigger, her nights out got longer, and Becky was tired of carrying the weight, both emotional and financial. Then came the third person, 19-year-old Rose Sodaro. They met online, and Nicole turned on the charm, feeding Rose another elaborate fantasy. She even introduced Becky to Rose as just her roommate. Becky wasn't fooled. She suspected the affair, and the betrayal cut deep. Loyalty was her compass, and now the woman she trusted most had broken it. For Nicole, though, Rose was more than just a fling. She was an escape, and with a $400,000 life insurance policy hanging in the background, she may have been Nicole's way out. To Becky, every laugh they shared, every text exchanged, felt like another knife in the back. Thursday, March 15, 2007. Becky Klein woke up early, just like any other work day. She left the house around 7:30 a.m., heading to her job. Nicole stayed behind, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, her phone never far from reach. For weeks, Becky had been carrying a heavy suspicion that Nicole was sleeping with 19-year-old Rose Sodaro. Friends would later reveal Becky suspected the unthinkable, that Nicole and Rose had already been intimate. It was a thought she could barely bring herself to say out loud. Whether it had happened or not didn't matter. For Becky, the trust was already gone. And the woman she had loved for 7 years felt like a stranger lying beside her. And once trust is broken, love rarely survives. At the office, Becky settled into her routine, logging calls, updating notes, helping clients with patience and care. On the outside, she looked steady and reliable, just like always. But beneath that calm surface, she was boiling. The late nights, the missing money, the lies. And now, Rose. Nicole, meanwhile, spent the day messaging Rose, making plans, feeding the fantasy. She had already told Rose that Becky was just her roommate. She didn't mention the 7 years of love or the promises they once made. By late afternoon, Becky returned home to an uneasy silence until the argument began. It started with money, spiraled into lies, and landed on Rose. Words were sharp. Accusations flew. Becky told Nicole she knew about them. Nicole snapped back. What happened next was fast and violent. According to investigators, Nicole grabbed a large garbage bag and duct tape. In minutes, Becky was no longer breathing. Nicole dragged Becky's body outside and placed it in the trunk of Becky's prized Ford Mustang, the same car they once took on weekend trips together. She parked it just a few feet from their front door, as if nothing had happened. Within hours, a missing persons call would be made, and what police would find inside that trunk would shock the community to its core. If you've been with us this far, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next story. March 15, 2007. By early evening, Becky Klein had not shown up for a dinner she'd planned with friends. She wasn't answering her phone. Concern grew quickly. Becky was reliable, always on time, always in touch. Around 9 p.m., one of her close friends called the police to report her missing. Officers from Villa Park PD arrived at Becky's home. Nicole greeted them at the door, calm, almost too calm. She told them Becky had left earlier in the day and hadn't returned. Something didn't sit right with the officers. Becky's purse was still in the house, her wallet, her phone charger. But the biggest red flag? Her Ford Mustang was parked right outside, something Becky never left behind if she planned to be gone long. Following procedure, the officers decided to check the vehicle. Nicole stood nearby, arms folded, watching them closely. When they opened the trunk, the air shifted. Inside, under a layer of trash bags, was the lifeless body of Becky Klein. She had been suffocated, duct tape wrapped tightly over her mouth and nose, plastic wrapped around her head. A death that was not quick, not painless. And she had been left just feet from the front door of the home she once shared with Nicole. Nicole Abusharif was immediately taken into custody. Her carefully crafted story unraveled within minutes. Police soon learned about Rose Sodaro, the 19-year-old Nicole had been seeing behind Becky's back, and that just days earlier. Nicole had promised Rose a life together, one without Becky in the picture. But the most chilling part? Investigators believe Becky may have been killed, not in a sudden burst of rage, but as part of a plan. A plan built on lies, betrayal, and a love triangle that turned deadly. March 17th, 2007, the morning after Becky Klein's body was found, detectives sat across from Nicole Abusharif. She was calm, composed, even flirtatious at moments. She denied killing Becky, claimed she had no idea how her partner ended up in the trunk. But within hours, her lies began to crack. Her phone records painted a different picture. The day Becky died, Nicole had been in constant contact with Rose Sodaro, sending dozens of messages, including ones about spending the night together. Rose was brought in for questioning. Just 19, she looked stunned. She told detectives she thought Nicole's relationship with Becky was basically over, and that Nicole had hinted Becky might be leaving soon. Rose had no idea that meant forever. Detectives also spoke to Becky's friends. That's when they heard something that would haunt them. Becky had confided she suspected the unthinkable, that Nicole and Rose had already been intimate. Financial stress was another piece of the puzzle. Nicole had been unemployed, living off Becky's income. Friends told police Nicole was desperate for Becky's $400,000 life insurance payout, and with Becky gone, she could collect the payout and start fresh with Rose. Prosecutors would later say this was no crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated killing, staged to look like Becky had gone missing, when, in reality, she never left home alive. On May 5, 2009, after months of testimony filled with lies, betrayal, and glimpses into a toxic love story, the jury delivered their verdict. Nicole Abusharif was found guilty of first-degree murder in the killing of Rebecca Klein. Media outlets swarmed the courthouse, splashing headlines that screamed, "Lesbian Love Triangle Murder." It was a sensational label, one that focused more on the sexuality of those involved than the devastating reality. A woman had been murdered by the person she trusted most. In court, Becky's family read their victim impact statements. Her sister's voice cracked as she spoke of birthdays that would never be celebrated, an empty seat at the dinner table, and a lifetime of grief no justice could ever erase. Nicole's family sat just a few feet away, silent, shaken. Some refused to meet the eyes of Becky's relatives. For them, it was a nightmare they couldn't reconcile. The daughter they loved had been convicted of cold-blooded murder. The judge handed down the sentence, 50 years in prison. With no chance of parole, Nicole must serve every single day. She will be in her late 70s before she breathes free air again, if she lives that long. Behind the headlines, behind the scandal, behind the lurid details of betrayal, was simply this: a woman who loved, trusted, and believed in someone, only to have that trust shattered in the most violent way possible. Becky Klein's life ended hidden away in a storage bin, right in her own garage. Her dreams, her laughter, and her future, all stolen by greed, lies, and a relationship turned toxic beyond repair. This case is a chilling reminder that the most dangerous person in your life may not be a stranger in the dark, but the one lying next to you